This week's podcast, we will be discussing experts warn of hacking group targeting aviation and defense sectors. Ukraine warns about massive data theft via Facebook. Microsoft warns of ice phishing threats on Web3 and decentralized networks. Squirrel Waffle malware loader exploits vulnerable Microsoft Exchange servers. And new unredactor tool extracts text from pixelized images. Experts warn of hacking group targeting aviation and defense sectors. Entities in the aviation, aerospace, transportation, manufacturing and defense industries have been targeted by a persistent threat group since at least 2017 as part of a string of spear phishing campaigns mounted to deliver a variety of remote access Trojans, rats, on compromised systems. The use of commodity malware such as Async Rat and Netwire, among others, has led enterprise security firm Proofpoint to a cyber threat actor codename TA2541 that employs broad targeting with high volume messages. The ultimate objective of the instructions is yet unknown. Social engineering used by the group does not rely on topical themes, but rather leverages decoy messages related to aviation, logistics, transportation, and travel. That said, TA2541 did briefly pivot to COVID-19 themed lures in spring of 2020, distributing emails concerning cargo shipments of personal protective equipment, PPE, or testing kits. The campaigns have historically utilized macro-laden Microsoft Word attachments to drop the rat payloads, although recent variants include links to cloud services hosting the malware. The phishing attacks are said to strike hundreds of organizations globally, with recurring targets observed in North America, Europe, and the Middle East. The repeated use of the same themes aside, select infection chains have also involved the use of Discord app URLs that point to compromised files containing Agent Tesla or Imminent Monitor malware, indicative of the malicious use of content delivery networks to distribute information gathering implants for remotely controlling compromised machines. Mitigating threats hosted on legitimate services continues to be a difficult vector to defend against, as it likely involves implementation of a robust detection stack or policy-based blocking of services which might be business relevant, DeGrippo said. Other techniques of interest employed by TA2541 include the use of virtual private servers for their email sending infrastructure and dynamic DNS for command and control activities. With Microsoft announcing plans to turn off macros by default for internet downloaded files starting April 2022, the move is expected to cause threat actors to step up and shift to other methods should macros become an inefficient method of delivery. And the source of that is the Hackers News. Ukrainians warned about massive data theft via Facebook. Ukraine's government emergency response team, Search UA, warns of a massive distribution of suspicious links to steal Facebook user authentication data. This was reported by the press service of Search UA on Facebook. Search UA asks to not click on links and to use multi-factor authentication. It is noted that hackers massively send messages on social networks, with the help of which they hack and steal the data of Ukrainians who are Facebook users. In particular, suspicious links are distributed on the internet. The experts found that the messages contain a link that, when opened in a mobile browser, loads a HTML page containing JavaScript code. When executed, the browser navigates to a URL domain, and from there it downloads and executes additional JavaScript code that mimics the Facebook login page and sends the entered user data to the attackers. In case the screen width exceeds 800 pixels, the link sends the main page of the YouTube site. As Search UA suggests, this is how the system filters out non-mobile devices. This activity is carried out by an unidentified group of people calling themselves Team Lucerna RD in order to steal the authentication data of Facebook users. Search UA states that the connection of this hacking of Ukraine accounts with the February 15 attack has not been confirmed. It should be noted that despite the fact that Private Bank and Oshad Bank restored the work of their portals after the hacker attack on February 15th, the attack itself continues. Moreover, it is carried out not only on these two banks but also on all Ukrainian banks, said the co-founder of the fintech band Monobank and the British Koto, the former first deputy of the board of Private Bank, Oleg Gorovkovsky, and the source of that is Vesti.ua. Microsoft warns of ice phishing threats on Web3 and decentralized networks. Microsoft has warned of emerging threats in the Web3 landscape, including ice phishing. Ice phishing campaigns as a surge in adoption of blockchain and DeFi technologies emphasizes the need to build security into the decentralized web whilst it's still in its early stages. And a quick Google, because I've not heard the term ice phishing before, it says, ice phishing, the technique doesn't involve stealing one's private keys. Rather, it entails tricking a user into signing a transaction that delegates approval of the user's tokens to the attacker. In an ice phishing attack, the attacker merely needs to modify the spender's address to the attacker's address. So there we go on that one. Anyway, back to the story. The company's Microsoft 365 Defender research team called out various new avenues through which malicious actors may attempt to trick cryptocurrency users into giving up their private cryptographic keys and carry out unauthorized fund transfers. One aspect that the immutable and public blockchains enables is complete transparency. So an attack can be observed and studied after it occurred. Christian Seifert, Principal Research Manager at Microsoft Security and Compliance Group, said, "It also allows assessment of the financial impact of attacks, which is challenging in traditional Web2 phishing attacks. The theft of the keys could be carried out in several ways, including impersonating wallet software, deploying malware on victims' devices, typo squatting legitimate smart contract front ends, and minting rogue digital tokens for airdrop scams. Another technique involves what Microsoft calls ice phishing. Rather than stealing a user's private keys, the method works by deceiving the target into signing a transaction that delegates approval of the user's tokens to the attacker. Once the approval transaction has been signed, submitted and mined, the spender can access the funds," Seifert elaborated. In case of an ice phishing attack, the attacker can accumulate approvals over a period of time and then drain all the victims' wallets quickly. One such instance of ice phishing came to light in early December 2021 when the high-profile hack of Ethereum-based DeFi platform Badger DAO, wherein a maliciously injected snippet using a compromised API key enabled the advisory to siphon $121 million in funds. The attacker deployed the worker script via a compromised API key that was created within the acknowledgement of authorization of Badger engineers, Badger DAO said. The attacker/attackers used this API access to periodically inject malicious code into the Badger application such that it only affected a subset of the user base. The script was programmed such that it would intercept Web3 transactions from wallets over a certain balance and insert a request to transfer the victim's tokens to an address chosen by the attackers. To mitigate threats affecting the blockchain technology, Microsoft is recommending users to review and audit the smart contracts for adequate incident response and emergency capabilities and periodically reassess and revoke token allowances. And the source of that article is the Hackers News. Squirrel Waffle malware loader exploits vulnerable Microsoft Exchange servers. In a recent blog post, Sophos has shared details about a new phishing campaign targeting vulnerable Microsoft Exchange servers. As elaborated, the researchers found the threat actors deploying Squirrel Waffle malware on vulnerable Exchange servers. For this, the hackers exploit Proxy Logan and Proxy Shell vulnerabilities to compromise target servers. This isn't the first time Squirrel Waffle malware has exploited the two vulnerabilities. What makes matters worse here is that the malware can survive remediation on compromised servers. That's because in this campaign, the threat actors not only exploit affected servers to send malicious emails, but they also export email threads which they continue to abuse by type squatting. Briefly during their study, Sophos researchers noticed one such email thread that the attackers had exported from a remediated server. They then continued sending the phishing emails via a typo-squatted domain. This technique facilitated the attackers to redirect any payments from the victims to their own servers. The attackers achieved a nearly successful payment redirection from the victims until the transaction raised red flags to financial institutions. As stated in the post, the victim organisation initiated a transfer of money to the attackers. However, one of the financial institutions involved in the transactions flagged the transaction as fraudulent, and so the transfer did not complete. According to the researchers, remediating the attack can help to stop Squirrel Waffle and other similar attacks. However, the recent campaign seems unaffected by remediation as the attackers employ typo squatting to continue sending spam emails. For such cases, the researchers advise the victims to file abuse complaints to the domain registrar behind the typo squatting domain. Also, flagging the compromised legit domain as spam can help. And that's from the latest hacking news. New unredacted tool extracts text from pixelated images. Security researcher Dan Preto from Bishop Fox has shared details about the unredacted tool to redact pixelated text from images. As elaborated in his post, the idea caught the researchers' attention after knowing about how DPix works. DPix is another similar tool presented in late 2020 by other researchers explaining how it could unredact pixelated text. While DPix claims to deliver good results, another researcher from JumpSec mentioned how DPix can fail sometimes because in real-world applications, explaining DPix's weakness in a post the researcher stated. A big caveat to DPix's use case is that it relies on the redaction tool operating in a specific way. The text must have been pixelated with a linear box filter, since it processes every block separately. What this means is that the tool takes a quadrant of the pixels and overwrites them based on specific averages of those collected pixels. The researcher even compared DPix's unredaction with that of password brute force to elaborate on how the tool's algorithm works. Given this weakness and JumpSec's challenge to unredact their given text, Petro decided to give text unredaction from pixelated image a try. Hence, he devised unredacted while fixing the issue that appeared when using DPix. As elaborated in a post, the problem with image pixelization that would fail in an unredacted tool include character bleed over issue, white space, variable width font inconsistency, and pixelization offset. After addressing all these problem areas, Petro tested Unredactor on the given pixelated text from JumpSec, and expectantly the tool successfully retrieved the challenged text. The researcher has shared the tool publicly on GitHub, so now anyone interested in cracking pixelated text can test the tool. And that article's from latesthacking.news.com. So that's all from this week's podcast. We hope you have a fantastic week. See you soon.